the Deer Grove EMS Commission meeting to order. Public appearances, public's opportunity to speak to the commission about any item not on the agenda. There are none. Approval of minutes from previous meetings.
Move approval of the minutes.
Oh, I did it. I got it right this time.
You did, totally.
Sorry.
I'll second it.
All right, a motion and a second to approve previous meeting minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Discuss and consider approval of December financial reports.
Just gonna go with the year end.
I'm assuming on vehicle maintenance, that's so far over because you've got insurance payments.
Yeah,
to
so
offset that.
we paid Truckstar and got the check from insurance, so you can see our insurance reimbursement up above. The bottom line of the income section
Yes.
jumped up to 18,000. So we made sure they were either both going to 19 or both going in 20, so they weren't to throw it
Yeah.
all off.
No.
I'm hoping for a really clean vehicle maintenance year in 2020, so that's why we pushed to have it all done in 19.
Yeah.
Don't hope, just make it happen.
Yeah.
That means
No
keeping-
pressure, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Talk to the local farmers maybe.
Yeah, well, you know, and Killer, he's got so much stuff in his freezer now,
Yeah.
I can't imagine he needs any more meat.
Overtime is over.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the trend I had noticed between years. Either overtime is over or wages are over. It's one or the
But
other.
if you net the
Yeah.
two, they're under.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Because with fewer regular hours, that means someone had to work, and typically it's full-time staff on overtime.
And you're
Yeah.
right, we have to have overtime hours consistently.
Yeah.
so.
Yes. We hope that with the addition of the part-timers that, or LTE staff that we added, that those numbers should kind of sway a little bit more towards using all the wage dollars and having money left over in overtime, but we're not exactly in a predictable business, so.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and second to approve December financial reports. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Discuss and consider approval of bills and budgeted approved expenses.
I'll move approval. Second.
Motion and second to approve approval of bills and budgeted approved expenses. All those in favor.
Question.
Question. Yes.
Somewhere in here I saw where we paid the credit cards, but then when I look on your credit card purchase page, they don't match.
So that's because the credit card purchase page doesn't have the office use only, which pays the invoices.
Oh,
So a lot of those you're gonna find. So for example, I gotta find one of them. Where are they?
Well, here's on page,
6.
page 6. Yep.
so the office only?
Yeah, so those we'll
Doesn't
use to
show
pay, yeah. I can add it if you guys would like,
No, I was just curious why
Yeah.
they didn't match.
cause we only use that one to pay like invoices, so our legal bill or like our Spectrum bill and those kind of
Oh,
things.
okay.
We don't use those for like Amazon or whatever.
Okay.
Any other questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Discuss and consider approval of write-offs and aging accounts.
Motion to approve the $527,959 that we made.
Yeah.
That's a substantial increase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve approval of write-offs and aging accounts in Any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign, motion carries. Staff report?
All right. So 95 calls for the month. 95 for the month, 99 for the same time last year. And as we've been reporting for the year total, we're at 1037, which is about 100 fewer than last year, with the Cambridge and the construction being
Interstate.
the two factors that we would identify as those. 7 missed calls. There was a couple days where we had, I think one day like the 14th or something like that. We had 4 calls in an hour.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure how you can predict that.
You know,
I mean, we could
no way
certainly
you can cover it
try.
either.
Right. So I think overall, I've gathered all the statistics, and I'll give you in the next commission packet the view of the past 5+ years to show where we're at, and we're looking at somewhere between 60 and 70 total missed calls for the year, which is pretty static for the past couple. So while we are missing calls, it's a number we'd like to be 0, but again, we can't predict 4 calls in an hour. Membership is stable since the last time we talked. Our new are we
Sorry.
missing a couple
Yeah,
of the recruits?
I apparently started and then went to look how to spell Josh's name and forgot to come back. I just realized. Where it says 5, there are 5.
Yeah. So we talked about them last month. It's Crystalline Bell, Bryce Bishop, Josh Libke, Elizabeth Griffin, and Jenna Ferger. They're all in their orientation process. We took the process that we created for the new LTE hires and kind of pushed that down to a defined process for volunteers and literally everybody that we put on the service, so that they have a defined process that they go through, with it being a minimum of 48 hours of ride time, hoping that they'll meet some benchmarked requirements in those 48 hours, and then move on from there from an orientation status to an EMT3 status, which means that they kind of have to ride along with other crews. Then with additional benchmarks in that EMT3 status until they're able to be a complete second on an ambulance. So for the most part, as volunteers, they're going to ride along with a full crew, because that's how our staffing model works, that we do have a full ambulance on all the time. But they'll get to the point where they'll be able to, let's say if we had 2 volunteers that decided to respond with us for the day, that we would be able to split up 2 paramedics with 2 volunteers and have 2 ambulances on them. So with the process that we're able to define that, and be able to make check marks to say that they've all completed the same process and they're all competent at the end. Big news for me is, going over to the chief's report, is I have both my feet back.
Under you.
And under me, and helping me move forward, backwards sometimes, left or right if I need to. So yeah, everything for operationally is back to normal. Able to respond to calls unrestricted. So I think since I was cleared on the 26th, I've been on something like 10 different responses already. I happened to actually respond as I was driving past a cardiac arrest call in the city of Sun Prairie. So I'm able to help out as we're driving past. So in the training overview, we completed VividTrack laryngoscope training. We decided, because it was a new device and a new procedure, that the last piece of training was going to be a 2-hour in-person session with me, because I happen to be the local expert on it, having done it often.
Can you tell us a little bit
Yes,
more what it is?
Okay, the VividTrack is, so it's a laryngoscope is a device that we use to place an airway into someone's trachea when they're not breathing. The laryngoscope typically had always been a manual device. It looks like an L with a bulb on the end. And it's a laryngoscope because it's used also in your left hand. That's how I remember. The future has it that will use technology. So this is a video, instead of having just a bulb, it has a camera in it, built into the VividTrack. so that instead of having to physically move stuff in the person, we put essentially the camera into their mouth to be able to see their airway structures. So the very high-tech device that they'd use in the hospital in anesthesia is a fiber optic scope. Well, those are expensive and need to be sterilized after each use, and they're expensive. Not to belabor that point. But this device does a bunch of things for us. We had a video alert scope already. It was called a King Vision. But it had its limitations in that the camera that attached to the handle easily came loose from the handle, thereby making it, it's a fault of the product, making it useless to us until we put the camera back in and it restarts and all that stuff. Because of the camera, it adds 3 or 4, however many inches that is, to the top of the camera, making it difficult for us to get it into the person's mouth, especially when we're already doing compressions on the person's chest. Which a lot of times when we intubate somebody, we are doing chest compressions because of cardiac arrest. The final advantage to the VividTrack is that it records the event. The procedure that we perform that has the highest incident of litigation is our airway procedures, and that would be because of the misplacement of it. If we don't place the airway, if we place the airway into the esophagus as opposed to the trachea, and don't recognize it, we're going to get sued, and we're going to end up having to pay a lot of money to somebody because of our faulty procedure. So this device is all included. It attaches to the tablet, which we've discussed already. We bought 5 total tablets, 1 for training, 4 for each of the units, 3 ambulances in the car. So the VividTrack plugs in with USB to the tablet, and the tablet is our screen. So literally on mannequins, it takes the intubation from being difficult and needing a lot of muscle to move airway structures around to, at my previous place of employment, we had children come out and we could show them how to do it. So it literally doesn't make it that easy on the scene. There's still complications that we have to factor for, but it does make the procedure a little bit easier, and we're able to record it and attach the image of that successful intubation to the patient care report to keep for forever, to say that yes, we just get, not only with our other means of verifying proper placement, verified that the tube was in the proper place, and so it just is that added piece.
Okay.
We've done one already this year, this past Saturday. It was successful, and the additional thing with recording is we're able to take the piece from where the camera physically enters the patient's mouth until when the camera is coming out of the patient's mouth. We're able to edit down to that and use that piece of recording for essentially a training exercise for the rest of the department. So if in a year we have 25 airway procedures where we place a tube in someone's trachea, that could be that one crew has 6 of those, another crew has 4, another crew has 5, and so on. It could be in a year that maybe one paramedic isn't able to physically do that procedure themselves. When we record it, the paramedic is then able to see live imagery of actual human anatomy and kind of be like they were in the moment, like a virtual training. So that's the advantage to the recording as well. So not only is it's good verification, it's a better device, but it adds for kind of some competency training for all of us at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
And I'll say, in my past place of employment, we incrementally added some parts to the procedure because we found that our success rate wasn't where we wanted it to be. It was, I would have expected that with that device, like I said, we could get kids to do it when they came into training. That should mean that adult paramedics with thousands of hours of education should be successful. It's totally not that simple, and it ended up not being the case. So there were some things that we could do, not only with training, but with the procedure to increase that success rate. So before I left, the prior employer's place of success was 95%, which is up about 20 percentage points from where it was. So what we implemented was the high point of the procedure. So all the things that got them from 70 to 95, we implemented at the 95 end. So we would hope that instead of starting out and having struggles in kind of mediocrity, if you will, that we'll be star performers from the get-go. So the next line of working with Jerry with the airway bag coincides with the VividTrack. Because the device has a camera or the tablet, we needed first of all a place to put the tablet in our airway bag. Our airway bag essentially was busting at the seams already. We had already put as much stuff and as much capability into our old airway bag as we could possibly think of. So to try to add an 8-inch tablet, even though it's not that big, really wasn't going to happen. So this was, I don't even know how long of a process to find the right bag and the right route to go with, and to get an answer and a different answer and a different answer from manufacturers. We finally settled on what we have now, and it's a kind of a 3-bag system, or a 1 big bag, and then on each side of the bag there's a smaller adult and pediatric airway kit. So that helps the staff to kind of de-stress the procedure. Some of the big mantras that I tried to stress through the training is that we're training for success. If we believe we're going to be successful, we're more likely to be successful than if we believe we're going to fail. If we go into a procedure believing we're going to fail, you'll fail. And also that with the equipment and the locations that the equipment has, is you open up one kit, and if you meander a path through the bag, it leads you from one part of the procedure to the next. So in other bag arrangements, it was you had to remember your one piece was here, your next piece that you needed was in this bag over here, or this part of the bag over here, then the next piece you needed was over here. With the kit and bags we created, it's all in one spot now. I went to the state and provided testimony for Assembly Bill 569 legislative hearing. You might have heard of it in the news. In fact, last night Devin was on the news and gave an interview about it's Assembly Bill 511 and Senate Bill 511, Assembly Bill 569. Both talk about PTSD, but they're specifically written to firefighters and police officers. Thinking that somewhere along the line someone thought that version of language would lead to more people being covered, not considering that there are many areas in the state that have standalone EMS that don't have any firefighting duties. So likely both of those bills are going to pass without EMS being added to them. Our hope would be that through our discussions and our lobbying that they can, in next session, make additional legislation to add standalone EMS and hopefully all volunteers to the legislation. The bill is basically what it allows for is workers' comp to be used for PTSD. Why an employee can't use workers' comp for PTSD right now is because of the proof to say that there's an extraordinary circumstance. It's well established that stress and traumatic events while on duty are standard for our industry. That being said, because those items and things are standard for our industry, to have PTSD as a result of them is not unexpected. So therefore those workers' comp claims end up getting denied. Come to find out, great for us that the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, who is our insurance provider, is 100% behind the bill. So throughout the past 3 or 4 months, I've worked with Dane County EMS, fire and law enforcement agencies to modify an existing active threat document. Basically, this document was created by EMS 5-ish years ago, largely southwestern Dane County EMS agencies. Some fire were involved as well. Unfortunately, it didn't really include law enforcement in the development process. So things were made, and law enforcement was like, "Well, we're not gonna do this." So this time we decided, as we edited it, well, let's have them be the leaders, because honestly, I can't go into an area that has someone shooting around and say, "Okay, mister, please stop, I gotta take care of victims." We needed law enforcement to at least create a semi-safe zone for us. So now this group has created a document that allows us to standardize, hopefully throughout the county, with specifically law enforcement and some of the things we know that law enforcement need to do. We are kind of on the cutting edge of the industry with this type of stuff, with correlating all these practices throughout the county. So It's a document that now, once it gets voted in by all of the county's associations, it will be put out as the guidance document for the county, and we'll be in training to it. For us, it's things we were doing already as EMS. We just have to integrate ourselves with law enforcement to be able to make sure that it works flawlessly. Finally, Deputy Chief Lisa and I attended separately, of course, because we chose different days. It was a web training, so we didn't necessarily need to be together. Attended biospatial training, and biospatial is a web-based platform that the state of Wisconsin contacted to attempt to aggregate in a better means all of our ambulance data that we input into the Wisconsin ambulance record data system. Here in Deer Grove, we don't actively use their system to write our reports. We use the LifeQuest Elite Bridge, and then we extract data to the state of Wisconsin. Every ambulance service is required to do that. You can use their platform if you'd like to, but then you're beholden to all of their policies and procedures with the software, whereas with our LifeQuest bridge, we're able to customize enough to make it work very effectively for us. Right now, the permissions to us locally aren't very good. We can see our own data, but we can already see our own data. So we're hoping that as we request more with this program with the state of Wisconsin, for instance, if you were to look at an opioid overdose, that we could at least look in Dane County and see the incidence of live opioid overdoses, and maybe have some predictability to that, as opposed to now, like I said, if we want to check opioid overdoses, we can look in our own software and check for ourselves. So, all right, so that's all the words for my report. As in months past, I'll let you read on. If you have any questions, I'll attempt to answer them.
When do you think you'll get 80 back?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a good part to stop.
Sorry, I asked.
I stopped in there today. We are waiting for parts from Demers. Demers is a Canadian manufacturer. That the parts, even though we were assured that they were shipped out at the beginning of the month, didn't ship till Friday.
Oh,
Great, I'll go up there and get them.
That's what we should have done. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean,
Good
go
way of
ice
having it.
fishing and bring them back with you.
yeah.
So as of Monday, they were held up in customs in Memphis, and they didn't find out they were held up in customs until Memphis till today, when I called to ask for a tracking number because I knew y'all were going to want to know an update. So there was some information apparently they needed from Truckstar, and hopefully that's all worked out. It's very small parts, and of course the sirens. We can't have an ambulance without sirens. So once those get in, the body work's all been done. The new bumper's installed. If you drove past, it's outside. It's sitting there. The fender was the only thing that needed to have any body work done to it. They took the fender. They painted it because when they got the fender in from Dodge, it's only primed. So they actually color matched it when they painted it, because otherwise they would have painted it white, and I was like, well, if you got to paint it, why not just color match it? That way if we accidentally scratch the vinyl, you won't see white paint underneath. So if we weren't able to get it wrapped, we would have been able to put it in service because the fender was color matched, and then we could have wrapped it anytime. But what Truckstar did was preliminarily got all their work done, took the fender off and took it to Mad Wraps. Mad Wraps just wrapped the fender. That's back and all installed. Again, all we need are the two lights on the grill, which even if we didn't get those, we could wait for those. Those aren't important. We cover, by statute, 360 degrees by the lights on the box. But we need the sirens and the siren covers. So those are essentially what we're waiting for. There's 16 pounds of stuff in Memphis right now.
So the bumper, are you using the new cow catcher?
Yes.
The one you ordered that was supposed to be installed but didn't get
Yeah,
installed?
they don't sell heifer catchers, just cow catchers.
Okay. All right. Well, I just figure if it's already tore off, I mean, now's the time to put it out.
Bigger the better.
Time. So.
Yeah, and we made sure, I made sure with Truckstar that they don't bill the insurance company for the bumper that they already paid for. So, but yeah, that should go. I'm hoping if they clear it up, they might be able to get the parts early next week. I'd like to think that Truckstar filled out the information necessary and the parts we'll get from Memphis to here tomorrow. And then sometime next week they'll have it.
Nice.
Yeah.
I made it be known that this is the second year in a row we'll have to manage with parts delays from Canada because of the manufacturer's long Christmas holiday.
Oh, yeah.
Like, well, before it was they had to manufacture the door. It didn't keep the vehicle out of service last year because the door was still workable and all it had was a crease in it. Whereas this year, these were essentially stock parts that they should have been able to pull off of a shelf, put into a box, and send to us. So hopefully those statements are heard loud and clear. But on the positive note, 81's running well.
Don't jinx that by saying that now.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I mean, it was cold today, so it's only going to be a little colder overnight. When 80 gets back, 81 will need to go in for an oil change. It's been a year, so
Yep.
that's it for that.
All right, any correspondence?
We do. So I'll kind of send things both ways. This packet here, has one of our patients in it, and it's a Facebook post that we got permission to post from the patient's family. It's a young lady that Devin and Ross have taken care of in 2018
December, yeah.
from a bad crash. And she wanted to come in and visit and say thanks and show the guys how she was doing. So that's what all those are, pictures of her and a little bit of a story about it. And then these are two notes that when we got the donations from the letter writing campaign that had come in with the donations.
Can we try and get that in the newspaper?
Sure. Yeah.
That'd be good PR.
Yeah.
Maybe recruit them to
I've
it.
seen some folks.
Yep. I appreciated the public relations special events information that they attended an event at Madison College.
Oh yeah.
Have you had any potential volunteers from that?
We actually met some of the volunteers that we interviewed. I think this.
That was like the week before the assessment center.
Yeah, so we had this, and then the week after we had the assessment center. So there was a lot of interest from what Mandy, Seth, and Elliot were mentioning, but that didn't correlate to a lot of people going to the website and physically applying.
I think we had one.
We do have a couple that have shown interest, and as we're on that, we have an interviewer hiring committee that we've kind of formed with Mandy, Alexa Martin, Lisa, Trevor Regali, and Ross has also shown some interest in being on it. So those would be our standard people that we would base a hiring process around, with the hiring process initially being an interview and a skills evaluation. So I've kind of left it up to them. I'd like to see that we could have regular interview sessions, but we also need to have people interested. So we have a couple right now, and I think as we get closer, we were thinking something like maybe 3 or 4. It's going to be 1 or 2, 3 or it's either going to be one of the 2, 3 or 4 per year, so that there's some gaps between each and gives the previous round of recruits the ability to orient themselves to the agency before we bring new recruits on. So we're looking at probably late February or early March for another recruiting session for this year.
All right, discuss and consider interfacility billing rates.
So this comes up because LifeQuest pointed out to us that we hadn't established a BLS interfacility rate. Even though it's not our intention to take BLS transfers, they still recommended that in case something happens, we had a BLS rate set. So I did a comparison of the first fee schedule you see is on the pages for what we did for our 2020 fee schedule. Then on the back is a 2020 rate comparison for inter-facility transports. Unfortunately, from looking at that, I feel like some people are very much underbilling. Because a lot of these are their actual base rates. So to have a $700 base rate, I think they're cutting themselves short a little bit. That they should raise their base rate a little bit. So we kept the $1,800 and then looked at reasonably what everyone else goes down to from their normal ALS rate to what the BLS rate is. So when we say $1,800 for interfacility, that means that we're gonna send a bill for $1,800 and really hope and pray that the insurance company says we'll pay that entire amount, which generally is not the case. Generally, there's contractual and agreed upon rates that we accept through our arrangements, and then on the flip side of that we'll get to in one of the next lines is, or next thing is, there's the Medicare and the Medicaid rate, which is nowhere near this even. So,
And if we start lower, they're gonna try to pay less or do less, so.
yeah,
I mean,
I thought that $1,300 was fair. Especially, the thing that made it most fair for me is that we don't have any of these interfacility transfers from our own community. We're gonna have to all go outside of our community for any of these. So at the end of the day, my proposal is BLS interfacility transfer rate of $1,300, regardless of residency status. The ALS rate of $1,800, as we have already established, regardless of residency status, and $25 per load mile.
Motion to approve.
motion and second to approve the interfacility billing rates. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Discuss and consider agreement with MTM for Medicaid payment and interfacility transfers.
Everything's in order.
You know.
I have my days.
So this leads directly back to
Sorry.
the interfacility transfer rates. To be able to get any compensation for Medicaid interfacility transfers, we have to align with MTM, and they're essentially the ones that pay us. So this agreement says that yes, we'll do the things that they want us to, which includes some additional training and other items that are necessary prior to going live with their stuff. The contractual rate that we have no means to argue with, and this is set in the state of Wisconsin as a 41% of Medicare reimbursement. The Medicare reimbursement rate for BLS interfacility would be $94.90 plus $5.56 per mile. The Medicare rate for an ALS, and this must be ALS, simple ALS, not ALS 1 or ALS 2, is $113.88 plus $5.56 per mile. And then the ALS 2 rate goes up to, and I didn't bring it with me, but it's like 190 is what ALS 2 rate is. Again, we can bill $5 million and they're still gonna pay us this dollar amount. We all complain about that compensation that's essentially set by the state of Wisconsin to spend federal dollars at such a lessened amount. So the MTM agreement is here because we will do our darndest to figure out someone's insurance status before we take an interfacility transfer. But that information is only as good as the person that's providing it. And if by chance we take that information and someone actually is a Medicaid patient and we haven't aligned with MTM, now we can't bill for anything. So even though it's not the dollar amount that we would like to get reimbursed for it, it's better than the big fat zero.
But would we, so are you suggesting that we will be turning down people if we know they're on Medicaid?
I personally think that's difficult. And the reason why it's difficult is because we're looking to build a relationship. From doing the numbers, generally a transfer from Stoughton Hospital is gonna go to St. Mary's. And based off of the $120-ish, whatever the dollar amount I told you, plus the mileage, puts us in the low to middle $200 that we would typically get for reimbursement. And that will typically at least cover the cost for us mostly. So that the thing that costs us the most for that transfer is going to be staff. It should be a 2-hour transfer. We would be able to cover the staff hours for that transfer with the dollar amounts that they provide. Is it the perfect solution? No. Is it a solution? Yeah.
Who is MTM?
Medical transportation, yeah.
Who are they?
Yeah. They're the company that Medicaid has contracted with to manage their system.
Because this contract is very one-sided.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Very.
I mean,
MTM, that's MTM.
Yes.
But I would,
That's MTM.
I don't care, you know, I'd like to see it reviewed by our attorney before I approve it.
Sure.
You know, we have to give them notice, but yet they can, you know, end it immediately, and you gotta turn over all these records, and,
Yeah, the records they requested, from what I saw, were gonna be easy for us to give them.
yeah, but it's state law, it doesn't require 2 days. You know, I'm very uncomfortable with it without review by our attorney.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure, not that I'll send it to Mr. Barker and have him review it, but I don't think that there's any way to change anything on it.
Eric and I sat through that training at the
So-
Life Quest conference about it,
It's a
and sat with other people that
Well, that's
contract
up for
with,
an
and it's
attorney
a,
to tell us whether there's
yeah,
something you can do
but they
about
were
it or
saying like,
not. We're
you're
not
just,
attorneys.
you have to do what they say or you get
Well,
nothing.
we get these agreements all the time.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing with you, Gary, I'm
And we
just,
cross them off
what
and
we-
they end up signing them.
yeah, from what we talked
From
with
the,
all those
you know,
people,
but
they
again,
were
we got
like,
the power of the state behind us, so. But yeah, like that indemnification and all this stuff.
Yeah, discussions we've had, especially at the Life Quest, and from talking to Edgerton and Beaver Dam Fire, who both are doing interfacility, is that this is the agreement you have. If you don't sign it and you happen to have a patient that has Medicaid, you get no reimbursement. So,
Well, again, I'd like to hear that from the attorneys.
So in number 2, who is CMS? Or set
Center.
forth by
Center-
CMS fees.
Center for Medicare and Medicaid,
Okay,
the government entity that oversees Medicare and Medicaid.
and in reimbursement, there's nothing said about how long they have to pay. Should be paid within 30 days. We don't want it to
Right, hangover.
be out there for 180 days or
Yeah,
longer.
yep. Yeah, cause then it is.
Because we have to pay our,
Right.
and in 4, what is NEMT?
Non-emergency medical transport.
Thank you. I think that's all the questions I have.
Yeah.
Assuming you're hoping to get this signed right away, so it can get.
I anticipated that I was gonna be instructed to send it to the attorney, so, we're not expecting that we're gonna run live full bore on February 1st, so, because we need to have some additional staff training. December was taken up with the ViviTrack training, January was taken up with protocol training, so February we were gonna, have the additional documentation types, training for staff. Because there are some additional things that they'll have to do specifically for interfacility transfers.
I guess the question I have with the attorney too is, what's the downside if we don't sign it compared to the downside of signing it and having them pull and all the work it seems like they're dictating to us that we have to do?
Well, not signing it, we don't get any reimbursement.
But how, you know, but in the long run, what's better sometimes? You know, how much reimbursement are we talking about? If, you know, if it's 1 or 2 incidents compared to us having some issue because of this, the way the contract and all the stipulations they put on the service. You know, this goes back to the old days of, you know, we used to talk about some fire departments don't do fire inspections because the amount of 2% dues they get or whatever. it was cheaper just not to do it compared to the expenses of having to do it. You know, so it's what's the downside to it, and I'm not creating an opinion one way or another.
Right.
I just, like you say, I'm just,
So if you mean, if we don't sign it, we're gonna do our darndest to not take any,
no, I'm not saying that, I mean, you mean we can't bill it all unless we sign this
not a
agreement?
thing. Well, we can send a bill, but we're not gonna get payment.
Yeah.
Cause the person that would do the paying is MTM.
Yeah.
And without the agreement to MTM, they've established that they don't
recognize
have to pay us anything.
Yeah,
And the biggest thing with Stoughton Hospital, I think most of the transfers that are probably gonna come out of there are probably gonna be Medicare. Because you get the nursing home right there.
True.
So I think most of it is gonna be this.
Fortunately, this is Medicaid specific, even though it says CMS on it.
Yeah.
It says CMS just because it's referencing the rate schedule. But this is a Medicaid specific agreement, so that if it was a Medicare patient, we would be able to bill to CMS for a Medicare patient and get reimbursement for that.
Do we already have a contract with Wisconsin Medicaid for doing emergency transports?
Yes.
Is it similar to this, or is it, it's outside of MTM, I know, right?
Yeah, so it's not
Specifically
MTM, because
with-
this is, they view the interfacility as more of a scheduled type transfer, even though it's kinda not. So that's why the scheduled medical transfer is going to the secondary agency.
And have you, from your colleagues who do have this agreement, I mean, other than the payment frustration that it's not a lot, have you heard other, that they actually, you know, ask for some of these things, or the operationally
I
it's
haven't
been?
heard any problem with the agreement aside from the rate that they pay.
Yeah,
The one thing that, the added piece of work that we'll have to do is every time we have an interfacility transfer, they have a web portal that we'll have to go and verify if the person is a beneficiary on there, and then alert them if we've transported them to begin the process. So that's one added step to the process of receiving reimbursement that would be different from any of the other transfers. But from what I understand, speaking to the other agencies, is once they do that, then they identify with LifeQuest, and LifeQuest takes it from there.
table this to the next meeting after attorney review.
Second.
All right, motion to table this until attorney review. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, motion carries. Discuss and consider a collaborative response agreement with Marshall EMS.
So in June, we discussed this agreement with Marshall where it would solely be Scott and I, Scott Lee and their director, collaborating together to provide an additional resource to either community depending upon who needs it. So we started July 1st and with a bang. I think we had, based off of the dates, oh, hey, look at that, I didn't include dates. The 4 transfers were all in July, like early July. Had I included the dates on there, the 4 calls that we did. There was a 5th, and that one actually just happened last week. So it was going well. We covered some calls, and then stuff happened. So obviously the last part of the year I couldn't respond because of my foot. Shortly after, into August, Scott had to let a staff member go, and that put his staffing model kind of upside down, so that he wasn't able to square that up until middle of December. So now his staffing has 2 full-timers, and he's stable and hasn't had to run on the ambulance himself. So you can see that there's 5 calls in here, 4 being in July of last year. Of those 4 in July of last year, 2 of them were Scott responding down here to transport the patient with me. 2 of them were in Marshall's response area and me going up there to transport the patient with him. Based off of the 2 calls we transported, they were, one was a Medicare patient and one was a Medicaid patient. And that's why the 2 calls that we billed out are base rate plus mileage and supplies and received in reimbursement an additional $757.35 because of being able to respond to those 2 calls for ourselves. So the impact to us was a little bit of a couple extra dollars into the bank account for overall the budget. We were able to cover our own calls, and the impact to the county was lessened because of us not needing to use additional resources from outside of our response area. There were 23 total opportunities missed throughout the course of time, with the majority of those opportunities being in our response area, which I think is a trend that we'll see to continue, that the majority of these opportunities are going to be in our response area as opposed to in Marshall. We talked about the factors negatively affecting and the factors positively affecting. So based off of the 6-month trial, my recommendation would be that we continue on a limitless basis until one department or the other determines that it's not working, and we can end it whenever we choose. There's no defined contract. We'll continue to evaluate it, and if it becomes too burdensome for one or the other, then it's also something that we don't need to continue doing. But I believe the benefits are evident from the couple calls that we were able to acquire and run for our agency.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
I appreciate seeing
I don't know.
this detail.
Now I'm gonna be the naysayer again.
Sure.
yeah,
We went through this collaboration attempt with them. I attended a lot of meetings with their commission. I was shut down. One commission member there, maybe he's not there anymore, said, I don't know why we need this. There's no difference between an EMT and a paramedic.
I'm pretty sure I know who you're talking about. He's still on the commission.
So I just don't want y'all feel that we're subsidizing or bailing them out, or our taxpayers are, because we still continue to afford to run the paramedic service, and they haven't made any attempts. So I mean, I just bring this other side out. I mean, kind of somewhat the same thing happened with us in Cambridge. You know, we had these meetings, we spent a lot of time and effort, and some of were at those meetings and stuff, and then all of a sudden it just, I don't know what happened. No one ever even bothered coming back and telling us. I mean, and a number of times, more so with Marshall, I mean, they literally told us that they weren't interested in talking to us, they weren't interested in dealing with us. I'm making that right, Greg?
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, which is great because you and the chief get along, but maybe sometimes that's politics that the political people don't. So I just don't want to see it being like this, you just said, limitless, and this doesn't seem a real good test period because of just what you're saying. You were out with your foot, they had staffing issues. I'm not saying to stop it, but maybe it's reviewed on a monthly basis or every 3 months or something like that to see how it's really going. This isn't really a fair test. I just don't think it's a big enough sample of the program. So
You can't argue with that part, but the big part that is the real test is the fact that I kept track of numbers.
yeah.
And had we been able to actually do it, it would have swayed our way heavily.
Oh,
So
yeah.
the argument could be made that Marshall was subsidizing us.
Yeah. Yeah,
Which
Markham-
I don't see this as either subsidizing each other. We're working together in an environment and in a age that some collaboration is ultimately going to be necessary. In fact, from the state of Wisconsin, their recommendation now to EMS agencies is to cross-credential often, and as often as you can, to help each other out with staffing. I'm not going to Marshall as a paramedic. I'm going to Marshall as technically their second EMT. So we're not providing them a service that they don't already provide for themselves, aside from the fact that they just didn't have staff on that day. So when Scott comes down here, he's doing the exact same thing. We're giving equals to each other. We're giving each other an EMT to be able to collaborate on it. I have not, when I respond up there, yes, I do take our car up there, but I don't use any of our equipment, and I don't act as a paramedic. Essentially, I'm a driver.
Yeah.
That's
But then
all- that's
you
all I
get
need
ready
is
to go.
Yeah, that's all I need is the second credential to make a legal crew. That's all we need is a second credential to also make a legal crew during the day. So I appreciate the,
Well, I just wanna be eyes wide open to this thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, and like I say, and I'm not saying that, you know, you and Scott get along and this and that, it's just the way that, you know, we were so much spoke about and the way it was handled before by their political leaders, you know, they didn't see the need, and we have a lot to invest in, we have a great group, we have a great service and a great crew, and, you know, I guess just that's my,
yeah, the scope of this is limited to only me.
Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah,
I'm
yep.
the
You're
only one
that-
with a
Free
Marshall,
range.
yeah, with a Marshall and Deer Grove co-credential. And the town of Sun Prairie, to be honest, doesn't wanna pay for paramedics no matter who it's from. They don't even wanna pay for paramedics from the city that shares their name.
And you'll
So-
include the data in your monthly reports, right?
Yes, I can.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
essentially, we will be reviewing it every month as we'll be reviewing your data.
Yeah, we can add that.
Cause it adds that extra call, and also too, if you're going to Marshall, because Marshall's crew is already out, if he didn't go, it potentially could have taken our crew, we would have been the next mutual
Oh,
aid
yeah.
anyway, and then we're out of a crew.
I'm not saying stop, but again, I
Yeah.
just, the one thing here is review agreement annually to ensure quality. I think this was a small sample, and that I'd like to see it reviewed a little bit more during 2020 to continue, like if it's part of the monthly report or whatever, so that we know and,
And I think we've got it out when it, you know, retain,
Oh, yeah.
to halt collaborative response at any time,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
but
I
like
think
you're saying,
more-
we have no
more data.
agreement. This is
Yeah,
just
there's more
the
data would be
handshake
helpful.
between the two chiefs with
Yeah.
commission knowledge, so, you know,
Specifically every 6 months.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And if we got on a monthly report too,
Right.
Yeah.
as part of that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so.
Do you need a motion?
I think so.
Sure, I'll move that we continue collaborative response agreement with Marshall EMS.
And review the agreement.
And
6
we
months.
review data every month, and it sounds like the agreement is, I mean, essentially we're,
Just the data.
yeah, because we can
Just
decide
add it
to
as
end
part of the monthly
agreement
report.
whenever we want.
I'll second it.
All right, a motion and a second to continue the collaborative response agreement with Marshall EMS. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Consider and adopt a motion to move into closed session pursuant of Wisconsin statute 19.851C for the purpose of considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the government body has jurisdiction or exercise responsibility, for purposes of the yearly performance review of the chief.
Are you making that motion?
Yes, I made that motion.
I'll second it.
All right, motion and second. Any, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Oh, roll call.
We get
Roll
to
call.
a
Roll call.
Mandy, you wanna do the roll call?
Aye.
Greg?
Aye.
Gary?
aye.
Troy?
Aye.
Stacy?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.